We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I'm back.
Anywhere you meet me, guaranteed to go
I like
down.
the way you ride with that booty on me.
It's going down.
Go down while you looking lonely.
It's going down.
Come around and it's all on me.
Anywhere you meet me, guaranteed to go down.
So, new year, new intro. Let's get it. I'm not so sure if I'm going to promise to be a brand new me this year, but my reactions are going to be a lot differently. I'm not going to be doing the most. I'm not going to be doing above and beyond, and I'm going to stay in my lane. That is how 2026 is going to be from here out. Either roll with me or I'm going to roll over you or around you. Whichever is easier.
Okay, she headed to the dance floor and she slowly starts out popping it. Song like my wrist piece, everybody got to watching it. Girl, you got that secret treasure, I'm gon' put a lock on it. Don't care what they say, I wouldn't stupid to be not on it.
Watch me flex. We pause to honor the breath that sustains us and the silence that clears the way. We step into this space rooted in ancient wisdom, shielded against distraction, and undisturbed in our purpose. As we open these pages and engage these ideas, grant us the clarity to discern signal from static. May the words we explore serve as tools for liberation, strengthening our minds, nourishing our bodies, and fortifying our community. We give thanks for the privilege of focus, the wealth of knowledge, and the sanctuary of this circle. Rooted, shielded, undisturbed. Amen. Now let's get to it. The reset. Close your eyes and drop your shoulders. Take one deep, full breath. In, fill the lungs completely. And exhale. And let it go with a quiet sigh. Feel the physical weight of your body anchored right where you are. Bring your awareness to the inner circle voice, the endless noise of self-criticism, self-judgment, and constant evaluation. Now, picture turning the dial down on that internal commentary. Silence the critic. Shut down the overthinking. Recall the feeling of complete absorption, losing yourself in a piece of art, falling into sudden kiss, or stepping into an absolute flow. It is a surge of pure electricity that overpowers every other circuit. No hesitation, no second guessing, just you entirely merged with the moment. When unself-conscious joy arrives, do not analyze it, do not question it, grasp it, hold it, let it stretch out into the quiet space around you, filling your whole horizon. Signal over static, pure focus. Rooted, shielded, undisturbed. Now open your eyes. Start living. When maintained as a discipline, AfroDruid's art ethos is a lifestyle praxis rather than some occult belief system. Don't get confused by the Druids. That's just my take or our take on natural occurrences and a way of thinking. There's nothing to see over here. So don't get confused by the hype, because all alternate explanations are not witchcraft. And we got to look into what the Bible actually does say about witchcraft. And I'm referencing, one of the references is Deuteronomy 18:10-12. There shall not be found among you anyone that burns their children as offering. I ain't nobody trying to do any of that. Anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens or sorcery or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer or one who inquires of the dead, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. There's divination, there's sorcery, there's spiritism, contacting the ancestors. Because evidently even Satan masqueraded as a good spirit to get back at somebody. But I wanted to make sure that people understood, or even I understood, what distinguishes the AfroDruid ethos itself from witchcraft. Because this system does operate as a very secular and philosophical framework and discipline. We ain't trying to do no occult mess and voodoo or anything over here. The anti-inflammatory protocol versus potions. My morning clarity routine of lemon water, ginger, rosemary, and bagels, basil, relies on biological and nutritional principles that have been found to reduce inflammation. It ain't some magical incantation that I'm sprinkling over my stove first thing in the morning, or my ninja hot water that I'm getting from the ninja thing. I talk about resetting and I talk about stillness, not some trance invocations. I'm not poking no pins and no voodoo dolls. The 1-minute breathing exercise that I started this episode with, and then the 10 minutes of silence, also function as a physiologic nervous system regulation. I'm taking control of how to down-regulate and control my responses. I'm not channeling entities. It's crazy. Ain't nobody got that kind of power. And I'm a little sketch at anybody that says they do. When I used principles of tactical tranquility and firewalls, because I don't want to get got. I got to live in this world now and as peacefully as possible. I pay attention to have attention economics and digital boundaries and informational hygiene. I address physiologically at focusing on an age where algorithmic noise rather than some type of spiritual spellcraft. Everything that I want to do is intentional. And if it don't make sense, it don't get into my boundaries. I'm going to have to shut that out. I'm going to have to shut that off. I recognize that God is my source, but I also adopt those principles of Buddhism and Taoism that are right in alignment with my basic Christian beliefs. I have gratitude for breath, for silence, for community. I give thanksgiving directly to God of the scriptures. That's Genesis and Acts for those that are wondering. I acknowledge that natural herbs and mental focus are created faculties, not autonomous deities. I don't worship the herbs or the mental focus. My strength and my belief is still firmly held with God. Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. and setting personal perimeters, very Section 31, and governing attention is an exercise in biblical stewardship over the mind and body. You can say from a modern and secular and esoteric viewpoint that seeking hidden guidelines like the tarot is harmless, empowering, and is aimed at love and light. However, these actions within the biblical framework, that is still rejected regardless of intent for specific theological reasons. The future belongs to God. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us. Again, that's the Deuteronomy of it all, 29:29. Divination seeks knowledge outside the covenant of trust. God asks believers to walk by faith, receiving daily guidance through prayer, scripture, and wisdom rather than attempting to force open the doors through hidden knowledge, through mechanics like tarot and astrology or scrying. So, do I think that God speaks to us and in different ways outside of prayer, etc.? Yes. Do I think you need to have something tangible like tarot and astrology to force people to interpret those things? Probably not. But sometimes man does need some way to be able to explain things. And do I think both things can be true? Can God speak through the use of those things? Maybe or maybe not. But I use meditation and prayer almost interchangeably. And I'm just also seeking discernment when there's truth in it. Not just because I want it to happen, because it is actually there. If I don't hear it, or that doesn't mean it's not necessarily true. It's just that I'm not deemed worthy at the time to get that message from the Lord, but I'm going to continue to seek. My relationship with God isn't the same as everyone else, but I'm going to continue to seek and make myself worthy. Prayer is an act of submission and relationship. Not my will, but yours be alone. That's Luke 22:42. Sorcery and magic is structurally of imposition and mechanics, using formulas, energies, rituals to bend reality events, people to one's personal will. And again, that kind of party. I would like to have so many things. I would like to have 12 out of 12 people come to my retreat. But if that's not the will, then that's okay. I'm just trying to put the word out there that this word is available, and I would hope that you would find it reaches you, and and if you're seeking, you would, by your own free will, come and get the knowledge and the healing. But if you don't feel led to do that because it takes a step out on faith, fine, then that's not for you to be in that environment. But I'm not going to try to force anybody, not going to try to manipulate. I'm just basically presenting the facts. The scripture has a strict boundary between the living and the deceased. Satan disguised himself as the angel of the light. That's 2 Corinthians. Contacting an unseen realm outside the Holy Spirit, you're vulnerable. I'm not trying to open any door that I can't shut, regardless of how pure or positive the seeker's intentions might be. That's why you'll never see any type of the retreats that I plan on doing. There will not be any tarot readings. Nobody's going to read your astrological chart. Nobody is going to have a seance because, again, AfroDruid Ethos is just boundaries, and it's just a philosophical standpoint. Nobody's trying to manipulate anybody to create some type of weird cult. We reset by mind and attention. We heal and we focus on intentionally seeking health and hope for our whole bodies. We have practical strategies for entrepreneurial blueprinting in prayer and faith. We have tactical boundaries, digital firewalls, and very disciplined living. Having disciplined physiological stewardship, mental focus, and socio-economic empowerment. That is what the AfroDruid Creeds is. Again, it's a lifestyle rather than some occult belief system. Ain't nobody trying to manipulate anybody over here. Ain't nobody trying to have some weird cult or over here. The retreat is simply that. It's a lifestyle of healing, of peace, and of boundaries, and some very good food. That's what the Afro Druids want to show. Not every alternate explanation is witchcraft, and not every ultra religious person is the truth, has the truth. I actually consider myself more spiritual than anything, and my Afro Druid ethos is not religiosity. I'm not trying to build a cult because it ain't all that. It ain't all that serious, y'all. You need to calm down. There is a tension between what organic spirituality and institutional religiosity is. And I think the rigorousness of religiosity makes thought processes like AfroDruid's ethos and the creed look more like a cult or witchcraft than anything. But what is the distinction? What is our source of authority and personal sovereignty versus religiosity? First, religiosity, the authority is a top-down and outsourced to institution. They say they are of God, but a lot of what the structure of the conventional religions are very hierarchical, and they have some rigid dogma. You have to adhere to an approved script. When we, as Afro-Druids, write our own, we recognize personal sovereignty. You take direct responsibility for what protects you, your focus, your physical state, without waiting for external permission. In religiosity, it often relies on some type of punitive framing, some type of moral performance driven by the fear of punishment and condemnation or exclusion. But when you're Afro-Druid spiritual, you basically are rooted in peace, gratitude, and tactical tranquility. Discipline is not a punishment to appease an external judge, because you can kick rocks. It is a shield to protect your inner clarity and well-being. In religiosity, rituals are often performative or doctrinal obligations designed to prove belonging or righteousness. I don't need to shout or speak in tongues to know that I am a believer. I don't have to show that to basically affirm my belief system. In spirituality or AfroDruid praxis, you basically is functional and it's biologically grounded. My internal flush, my morning clarity, and the stillness exist because they downregulate stress. They clear physical inflammation, and my mind is more sharpened. I create all of this with the help of AI. Thank you, Jarvis and Gemini. And I deliver a measurable quality of life. Religiosity often creates an in-group versus an out-group, truly viewing the outside world as fallen, evil, and inherently hostile. You on 20, you don't even realize you always on 20. But with intentional spiritualism, which emphasizes social regeneration and radical reciprocity, it honors connection. It acknowledges that we exist in harmony with natural biology and collective community, with purposeful technology. Escapism or just practical liberation. And highly religious people, they frequently focus on deferring peace or reward to an afterlife or when they get some fictional house. They tolerate poor earthly conditions in the meantime. And it's not all that serious. And you can actually change your environment in the now instead of waiting on what if will come. Because when you are really grounded with the AfroDruid or a true spiritualism, it demands practical liberation now, being in the moment. You build sovereign finance, you establish firewalls of attention, and you master the tools of innovation to live free and undisturbed today. Rigid religiosity conforms to doctrine, where a spiritual ethos like AfroDruids, you master yourself and you align your inner peace. We protect the perimeter, integrity, and signal over static firewalls. I'm not going to sit in judgment over the world and condemn it. I'm going to figure out how I can make it better for everybody. We're not subservient to institutional structures. We, as AfroDruids, are rooted, shielded, and undisturbed. Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. So take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. Where's to know and where's to grow, a temporal rainbow. I can be anything. So take a look, it's in a book, a temporal rainbow. A temporal rainbow. A temporal rainbow. So I have decided to supplement my reading. I am right in the middle of reading B.B. Moore Campbell's singing in the comeback choir, as well as I've been introduced to Mostly Harmless in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or as it's more correctly titled, they called him Mostly Harmless. So, by the same author as Hitchhiker's Guide. There are a bunch of people that leave or just go off grid because they just need some distance. I have personally coined the term for myself, being off grid in plain sight. My home currently is situated such that I really don't have to literally go outside or interact with y'all. And I like it like that. But I know I have to get out and around people because I'm getting weird. But again, I literally don't care. But anyways, there are some people that just need a distance from their lives, from their families, from relationships, from a job, from a diagnosis, from a version of themselves that they no longer recognize. Some people just go so far off grid, the world has no idea where they went or even what to call them. And that's where I picked up on the dude they called him Mostly Harmless. I fell upon this while I was watching my podcast on YouTube. And then there were there's like these follow-up documentaries that YouTube says you may be interested in. And I started watching it, and it was about this guy. I had heard his story in several iterations before, a documentary about the Appalachian Trail. But this one popped up as a documentary on Max that was truly these people trying to identify who this hitchhiker was. Because when Vance John Rodriguez went off grid, he went off grid. And he basically died alone, and nobody really knew who he was. He was just an 83-pound grown man corpse. But in 2017, they noticed this dude began walking along the southern part of the Appalachian Trail as it picks up in New York. He had a heavy backpack, a notebook filled with notes about an online programming game, Screeps, and he had very little interest in remaining connected to ordinary systems of identification. No phone, didn't have a credit card, no obvious digital trail. He wasn't on Facebook. He wasn't doing Instagram lives documenting his trail. One of the first of many reports, this was online, of course, about Wired. He was actually called mostly Harmless initially, and the available reporting does not establish exactly what Rodriguez intended. It simply places his chosen name alongside a familiar piece of science fiction language, a phrase that sounds reassuring while quietly suggesting that the universe is not especially interested in anyone's personal plans. On the trail, the name became more than a literary echo. It was the only name people had for him. He was friendly, funny, solitary. Somebody by the name of Kelly Fairbanks, this woman remembered him meeting him alongside of the road. She recall his beard, trekking pole, kind eyes, and an insistent that he did not use a cell phone because sometimes people just wanted to disconnect. Hikers remember conversations, meals, gear, jokes, and passing moments that might otherwise have vanished into an ordinary blur of a long walk. But they really didn't know him except for that surface stuff. They only knew him as the person he allowed them to meet. In 2018, July, 2 hikers in the Florida's Big Cypress National Preserve found a man dead in a yellow tent. He had cash and food nearby, but no identifications, electronics, wallet, or personal information. Collier County Sheriff's Office described the challenge they faced because there was no immediate way to connect the unidentified man to a missing persons report, a law enforcement database, or a family waiting for news. The cause of death remained undetermined. There was no simple explanation. He became John Doe. To the people who had met him on the trail, he was just mostly harmless. To investigators, he was an unidentified person whose life had ended far from the systems that might have helped name him, or in the conventional sense, might have helped him. But what do you do when somebody doesn't want to be helped or to be found? They just want it to be left alone. Can you imagine just disappearing? Some of us want to live that fantasy, turn off the phone, abandon the inbox, leave the keys on the counter, and just become unknowable for a while. I do it to a certain extent every single day, but not to this extent. It's like he wanted to erase his existence or the existence of John Rodriguez. It is another thing to realize that somebody actually did it, as I said. The investigation did not belong to just one person. There was just a network of strangers focused on the one task. The sheriff's office released a sketch and photographs. Hikers began to compare memories, and then online groups collected photographs, hostile records, trail sightings, notes, and impossible aliases. There was a group dedicated to identifying him that grew into the thousands. Natasha Teasley helped organize the online search. She reviewed public records and missing person databases, including NamUs, and came to understand how many unidentified people remain without names. That realization is what matters. The group's work was not only about one unusual hiker whose story had captured our attention, it exposed a much larger landscape of absence. A bunch of families without answers, unidentified remains, incomplete records, and people who disappear without generating the kind of alarm that makes headlines. The online community did make mistakes. Some theories were wrong. Some strangers were incorrectly identified. The imagination sometimes rushes ahead of evidence. That tension is what makes the story worth revisiting, because you can be sincere and still be very intrusive. Curiosity can begin as a compassion and drift towards projection. People want to help, but they also fill the empty spaces with stories of their own. When Wired investigated, that captured the uncertainty. The trail encounters, the expanding online search, the clues that seem promising, and the question of why someone who had appeared so memorable to strangers had remained invisible to everyone who might have known him best. The search then moved beyond photographs and recollection. The online community raised 5G to basically fund advanced DNA testing. That money allowed Othram, a forensic genomics company, to analyze DNA from bone fragments and then search genetic relationships while rather simply looking for an exact match. I mean, science wins again. I need facts. The process narrowed the search towards southern Louisiana and Assumption Parish. The investigative reporting helped amplify the story and circulate the images. Former friend and college roommate began to recognize details that the trail community could not have known. In time, they identified Vance John Rodriguez. Identification restored the name, but it did not produce a single exploration. What happened when the man behind the trail name became Vance? Friends describe intelligence, technical talent, depression, isolation, humor, and periods of withdrawal. This is withdrawal in the extreme. Former partners also describe troubling and abusive behavior. And those accounts don't cancel one another out. They just basically amplify the complexities of a real human being. A person can be lonely and harmful, talented and emotionally unavailable, warm with strangers and frightening in private, capable of tenderness in one setting and cruelty in another. That's not a satisfying conclusion, but it's a human one. The documentary's value lies partly in refusing to turn Rodriguez into a folk hero or a monster. It also questions the culture that forms around unidentified persons cases. What do we owe to someone whose identity has been lost? What do we owe the people who knew him before the public created a story around him? And how should a community respond when the answer complicates the version of the person it hoped to find? The name Vance John Rodriguez gave investigators something the trail name could not: history, a family connection, a fuller record of life. But it still didn't tell us everything. It didn't make every unanswered question answerable. It did not make the harm described by the people from his past disappear. But it did mean that he was no longer a story strangers were telling about an unnamed man in the woods. I am pairing this week's reading with Douglas Adams' Mostly Harmless, not because it explains Rodriguez and not because the literary reference can be proven beyond what reporting establishes, but because the book's title became attached to the trail identity that so many people remember. Adams' novel is funny, strange, and existentially slippery. It plays with the gap between what a label promises and what reality delivers. That makes it a thoughtful companion to this documentary, provided we resist the temptation to make the connection too tidy. The most moving lesson here may not be that the internet solved a mystery. It is that people noticed someone missing even when they did not yet know from where. A trail angel remembered a stranger's eyes. Hikers remembered his jokes. Online volunteers organized photographs and records. Reporters followed leads. Geneticists built connections across generations. A former roommate recognized a face. Together, they restored a name. But perhaps the deeper responsibility is what comes afterward. To remember that a name is an opening, not an ending. It asks us to hold a person's complexity without turning it into entertainment. It asks us to care about an unidentified people who may not have compelling nickname, a memorable photograph, or thousands of online followers. Vance John Rodriguez tried to disappear, whether he was seeking peace, escape, punishment, or reinvention, or simply distance, is something no article or documentary can fully determine. What we do know is strangers refuse to let him remain unknown. And sometimes that is the first act of dignity we can offer someone, not to invent a better story for them, but to acknowledge that they had a
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Count my blessings, hand on my heart. Fire lift up, we light up the dark. Oh, the joy and peace, I seek them true. Positivity set me free. Yes, I do.
My apologies to Henry Mancini, but a riff on the Pink Panther theme is in alignment with a podcast segment dedicated to a fictional PI and all about true crime, or fictional crime in this case. Don't you think? Scamming just be scamming. People are straight up gangster tripping. Know that everything is not always all right. You still gotta prove. I hate always having to prove myself, but when it comes down to it, if I basically do my job, do it correctly based on facts, I don't have anything to remember because I'm gonna answer the same way based on the facts that I know. But people are always reinventing themselves and trying to figure out other ways to relieve other people of their money, their peace, and their personal property. I recently watched a documentary, I believe it was Bloomberg Investigates, about zombie loans and deed fraud. My title is Free and Clear, but I also know I have to still be on guard for thieves out there with other things in mind. A clear title and knowing it's clear is a strong foundation, but it's not a permanent force field. There are fraudsters still attempting to forge documents, impersonate owners, and create fraudulent liens. Look, they tried to sell off Elvis's house just last year, year before last. We as AfroDruids guard the perimeter. And this is some practical knowledge I'm getting ready to drop. I don't want to create panic because that's not protection. Protection is awareness, discernment, and consistent attention to what belongs here and what doesn't. This is only for information serve only. This is not legal, title, insurance, financial, or law enforcement advice. Consult an appropriate attorney, professional insurer about your specific situation. What exactly is title theft? It is a common phrase for several related forms of real estate fraud. In Chattanooga and across East Tennessee, it looks much the same. A criminal may impersonate a property owner and try to sell the property or borrow against it without my knowledge. That would piss me the fuck off. I'm already irate by these unsolicited mailing things I get in the mail about, because whenever you take out a line of credit or you refinance, that information is recorded and becomes public record. And you got people like these legit players and illegit players trying to get in on how they can scam you out of the equity of your home. They gather information about the property owner through public records, data brokers, and phishing. They impersonate the owner to a real estate agent, title company, lender, notary, or recording office. I wish they would go to Trey and them at the real estate office and say, they me. You really? They better recognize. I know Trey will be on the horn saying, "Who? This is not you. That's not her," and she gonna be mad as hell if you try to go through this. And they calling the cops. I'm just saying. They try to go to a lender, a notary, or recording office. I would hope my big back and my fro will make me identifiable to the few people, the few institutions that would be able to sell a house of this magnitude. They are going to be like, "We know that's not you. You tripping, kick rocks." They will try to submit the deed, mortgage, lien, or some other documents. They somehow will then get it recorded at the land records office. And then they'll try to sell the property, borrow against the equity, collect proceeds, and transfer ownership to somebody else. And it can take a grip for you to unravel all of this off. But this is legit. This is what they're doing out there. Besides the zombie loans, there's so many people caught up with this, not just in the big cities, but also in these small towns. There could be something about some type of absentee-owned property, thus, even though it's in the public zeitgeist, like Elvis's house, some vacant land or some unused vacation home, or a residence with substantial equity. But an occupied home is not automatically exempt. A free and clear title just makes the property attractive because there may be significant equity available. Criminals may attempt to create the appearance of a debt through a fraudulent mortgage or lien, and even though the homeowner never borrowed the money. You may think the county clerk or recorder carefully verifies every document before it becomes part of the public record. That is not always how the system works. These offices generally review documents for required formatting, fees, signature, notarization, and other filing requirements. They may not independently verify that the person signing the document is truly the property owner or that the underlying transaction is legitimate. In other words, a document can appear legally formatted and still be fraudulent. That is why when you receive notification about a new deed, mortgage, lien, or satisfaction or other filing matters, the notice may be your earliest opportunity to investigate. The official county Register of Deeds property alert system is the more relevant perimeter tool. It is opt-in and forward-looking, non-retroactive. It can alert you to newly, and I didn't know about that. That's good to know. To newly indexed activity associated with the name you enter, but it's not a title search, not a substitute for reviewing the actual public record, and not a legal guarantee that every fraudulent filing will be caught. Still is something useful to use. Set up your notification criteria and keep your email account secure, and read every notice carefully. If something don't look right, don't click on the link in the message and don't call the number supplied by an unexpected notice. You got to be careful. again, I say this all the time. Ultimately, the security of your accounts are up to you individually. And you let in unforeseen and malevolent forces without your knowledge. But you got to be smarter. There's also when somebody is trying to impersonate you, when the criminal pretends to be a legitimate owner in a real estate transaction. They use stolen personal information, forged identification, and altered documents, and even a legitimate notary credentials without the notary's knowledge. There's the American Land Title Association, and they have been tracking serious fraud with titles and settlements. They target vacant land or properties owned by people who live elsewhere because the true owner may not visit often enough or receive local mail. This is different from the simple online listing scam. When you impersonate a seller, the criminal may attempt to manipulate the actual legal transaction and public record, not merely advertise a property they don't own. Property fraud does not always begin with an attempted sale. Actually, I think I saw this with type of real estate fraud in California where people were advertising these apartments and they weren't even the owner of the apartment. And people moved sometime across country to apartments that they weren't rented, that the person had no right to lease. And they stuck like Chuck. A criminal may try to record a fraudulent mortgage, second mortgage, or home equity judgment or some other type of lien on the property. If the document appears to be valid, it can cloud the title and create costly dispute. The homeowner may discover the problem only after receiving a foreclosure notice, a demand for payment, or an unexpected title search result. Mortgage fraud involves false applications, stolen identities, and fake income documents or unauthorized loans secured by the property. Wire fraud is another threat, especially during a purchase, refinance, or sale. The FBI's 2025 Internet Crime Report recorded over 12,368 real estate complaints and $275 million in reported losses just during 2025. These figures represent the FBI's real estate category, not deed theft alone. Down in Scam in Miami, remember Spin That-ish, the figure is 58,141 victims with $1.3 billion in losses from 2019 through 2023. That figure should not that's not deed theft, y'all. That's all of it compiled, which is crazy. The zombie loan is related, but it's technically not the same thing. Technically is legal, ethically is down. It's just crazy. These loans generally are old, dormant, or forgotten mortgage debt. There usually are a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit that resurfaces when a creditor or a deed buyer attempts to collect, enforce the lien, or pursue foreclosure. And it's big business. It's not the same as deed fraud because deed or title fraud involves unauthorized transfer, forged documents, impersonation. The zombie loans involves a pre-existing debt or lien that may have been dormant, poorly documented, or transferred, or misunderstood. The fraudulent mortgage or lien recording involves someone creating or recording an authorized claim against the property. Wire fraud involves redirecting money during transaction, even when the underlying property ownership is legitimate. The categories can overlap in complicated title dispute, but they require differing investigative or legal responses. But they are just as costly and just as mentally traumatic. Protection is a routine and it's just not some one-time emergency project. I would enroll and I should enroll in the Hamilton County Register of Deeds Property Alert System and review my records through the Hamilton County Register of the Deeds. The alert system is helpful. It's opt-in, non-retroactive, and it's not a title search or legal guarantee. You got to review your property records periodically, because if you own vacant land or you inherited property or a home you did not occupy full-time, protect your accounts. Use multi-factor authentication, banking, and even cloud storage. If you receive a suspicious filing notice, call the Hamilton County Register of Deeds using contact information from the official website. That number is 423-209-6560. And for the cheap seats, that number is 423-209-6560. Again, save all the copies of the notices and document details. Record the date, document type, book and page number, instrument number, and any contact information. Review the owner's title policy. Some have to purchase lender's title insurance at closing. That policy protects the lender, not necessarily us. If you purchase that title insurance policy, review it. Ask a licensed title or insurance professional whether your policy includes protection for forgery, impersonation, or fraudulent transfers. Report it quickly to your county recording office, title insurer, or title professional, and lender if applicable. Local law enforcement or an attorney who handles real estate or title matters. If money was wired, contact the sending bank immediately and ask about a recall or fraud response procedures. This is a lot of stuff, y'all, but you got to, because these scammers just be scamming. The goal is not turn your home into a bunker or spend every morning expecting a new crisis. The goal is to make unauthorized activity harder to miss. A paid-off house represents years of work, sacrifice, and stability. Protecting it means knowing where your records are live, understanding what your insurance actually covers, and securing the accounts connected to your identity and paying attention when something changes. That is the perimeter, not paranoia, but presence. Check out for more detailed writings on my Dale's Angels Inc. blog and on the Afro-Jewish perspective on the main webpage.
Let's calibrate the frequency on this one. The swamp is crowded, full of underfed, frozen-faced predators, snapping at marbles, desperate to be the chosen editors. They call it a lifestyle, but the game is just a rigged simulation. A no-win test designed to force a toxic confrontation. But the operator arrived with a full-blown session. No damsel in this room, no victim waiting for a cape. Just a mogul in the shadows, measuring the shape.
I really hate watching a lot of reality TV these days. Right now, watching probably one of the poorest quality productions on TV. Can somebody explain why they didn't pick up in editing, why nobody saw to properly mic these women, why they open up? I'm on episode 5. They open up to a woman surviving a late pregnancy fetal demise. First, I didn't even know who she was. All I know is in it's Ziggy. Ziggy, they show her in initial cuts how pregnant she was. Evidently, she was 8 months along or 32 weeks. Not sure what happened and how her son died, but he passed away at 5 days of life. And now she and the baby daddy, because I don't think she's married to this guy. I don't even think he lives in Orlando. And he's talking about how he doesn't think he's going to make it back for the funeral because he has to go back to his business. he got there late. She basically went through the baby. He got there in enough time to hold the baby when he finally kicked. And then now they show them, she's talking about how she's planning this baby's funeral, the tiny coffins, how they're trying to plan for him to basically still be present the following week when they actually laid this baby to rest. And it's all just so tragic. And the problem is, I couldn't hear most of it. They showed them dancing and he's rubbing on her belly. She's clearly far along in her pregnancy. And in the next scene, we see her in the bed and they're discussing planning this kid's funeral. And he's planning on not being able to get away from work. I'm like, man, boy, bye. Bye. This story would be very compelling if we saw the run up to it. If we had more than poor sound, if I understood who these people were, what the backstory is, who is Ziggy, what is her relationship with this dude. Again, I'm 5 episodes in and I don't understand any of the dynamics. I don't understand what, if any, beef there is. This is such a low quality show because the stories are not connected. The beefs, if there are any, I don't get it. I don't see a connection between her. This girl, Lulu, her story is compelling because it's like she divorced her husband or broke up from her ex, wanted to have kids, started taking care of this kid in foster care. The courts placed him back with his non-related family or whatever. I don't know what that means. Some Florida man BS. And we see her weeping on and off. Again, the stories are so disjointed. It's like they are producing or shooting this halfway through, right in the middle. Instead of starting from beginning and having some type of middle and end, we are basically only got the end of it. We only know that the kid has been removed and now she's trying to file for custody, or not custody, but she's trying to adopt a baby that's no longer in her home. We missed a whole bunch of steps. There is no run up. They've only shown us the end result of we don't know the previous missteps. That's why the story of the Ziggy and her pregnancy loss, late stage, I need some more context, because me just seeing you dance around in the apartment parking lot with your baby daddy, you go from, and I didn't hear any music, I didn't hear anything, to then y'all laying up in the bed trying to plan the baby's death, his funeral. It makes no sense. And again, y'all making me feel like I'm going deaf because I can't hear anything, because I don't know. The sound production is awful. Who greenlit this? Was this supposed to be some type of filler? Major fail. This is horrible. So that is me starting at the end, because they've released already 5 episodes. I'm already fussing, but I have more commentary on others because these people tripping. I'm so sorry. I just found out that Ziggy baby, actually, she found out early on that the baby had trisomy 18. It is not 2 copies of the 18th chromosome. He had 3. And he also had a congenital heart defect, and his chances of survival was less than 5%. That's why she actually had all those problems. And even though her pregnancy looked like it was progressing, it was always a possibility that she miscarried and he was never going to be normal. And he also had a low chance of survival outside of the womb. And as someone that has taken care of those types of infant, and I actually had to pronounce an infant with that type of defect, dead when I was actually in practice. Now I get it. So even though I could hardly hear it, that story, it's a lot. And she's brave for putting that out there like that. She and Lulu, and with her desire of also having a child and helping her mourn. And now they're at this baby's funeral, and he just looks like he's asleep. I get it. Oh, this is a lot, but it's real. I get it. I do get it. I can't even, I have like no comment on the Real Housewives of OC. I've just come to the conclusion that it is unwatchable. It's boring, and it was a waste to bring back clueless, horse-face Vicky Gulverson. They basically bullied Tamra Judge into treading lightly around Shannon and her mess and her tripping over herself to produce a moment with no storyline. And you can't talk about the obvious because she's going to act even worse than the horrible person that she has a reputation of being. It's rich that she blamed and went off on Tamara because what Tamara said wasn't not true. Was it kind of mean? Sure. But why don't you have a thicker skin? Why don't you just admit that the reason why it stung you because it's absolutely true? You came in after Tamara. You still on the struggle bus. You still renting. You're not married, hardly dating. And all of your kids are away. And because of your drinking, if you didn't have this job, you wouldn't be able to go and be with them. You can be delusional all you want to, but Tamara Judge doesn't have a mugshot. But what she is on a show that she has carried on her back and carried from the brink of extinction. Because if she hadn't come back, they would have canceled y'all, and y'all wouldn't have gotten to the 20th season to give us nothing except for excuses. Why don't we just start there? Why don't we stop having talent give production ultimatums when they're not producers? How about that? How about you do your job? How about you clock in instead of giving us excuses? Why are you whining about the obvious? Why are you whining that she is not going to call you on your BS and not let you just run amok? Because that is a show doesn't make. You don't get to catch a check and do nothing. It would be different if we saw growth. We ain't seeing no growth. All we're seeing is excuses. And the ratings show it. No, the ratings aren't as bad as The Valley from what I understand. But I know I'm not watching the mess no more. If Carlos King and Bubba Lip Bellino can't make this show interesting or wanting me to watch it again because I missed something, there's no need for me to watch it. All it's basically showing me is there's going to probably need to be a major shakeup if Tamara doesn't wake up. And that's for real. And that's the same thing I feel about The Valley. I have never been seeing such boring reality TV as watching a 2-part reunion. And I don't even think they required the 2-part. They could have condensed it into maybe 1.5 because I'm tired of them yelling about the same crap. I'm tired of them and the underfed. What is her girl? I can't even remember the girl's name. I don't care if Jesse treats his ex-wife mean. That's his ex-wife. I don't care if Kristen had severe postpartum depression and she ain't marrying the guy with the beard, the Opie guy with the beard. I don't care if the actor is always acting and he drinks too much and he acts poorly. And still he's not the crass douchebag that Jax was. But at some point, the show is not entertaining, not fun, in the words of Kyle from Summer House. They point to them, not fun. Point to Stassi's house, the house of Stassi's, kind of fun, even though I think she needs to answer for a whole bunch of stuff because I didn't know she said that racist shit about Black Lives Matter. And Kristen Doty has never answered for that crap either. So with that said, I don't even think they're coming back because the ratings are so low and so horrible. They're talking about bringing douchebag, drunk ass, crackhead ass Jax back to breathe some type of life into the show. Lala and Schwartz couldn't even breathe life into this show. It is so boring. It is just so, I don't know. I just know they don't need a third part reunion. But I am invested in Real Housewives of Atlanta having a third part, invested in probably watching The Girls Trip, invested in if they basically bully that horse face Vicky Gunvalson into submission and she runs back to the OC because she can't handle it, because she is out of practice and she doesn't read the room and she's used to trying to bully those other white girls in OC when she has no credibility. There would have not been a continuation of OC in New York if there wasn't a Real Housewives of Atlanta or even Jersey. And she better recognize and get her head out of her ass and stop thinking she's going to be able to treat them women, especially the women from Atlanta, like she's used to treating those white girls over in the OC. She better get it all together because they're going to gather her up and spit her out. And then she's going to be like claiming that, oh, I feel threatened. Yeah, you should feel threatened because you said some crazy shit. They basically turning back the same shit you tried to do to them. They basically drenching you and setting your ass on fire because you dumb, you are ill-informed, you are not equipped to handle Real Housewives. Go back to OC and sell your insurance. I'm tired of you being on my screen. Maybe that's one of also the reasons, because I never missed her. I thought OC did not need her to come back, but she's too thirsty and she's too clueless to think this is her show and they need her. She's going to ruin the show because she's not invested into making the show great. She's invested into catering and coddling drunk ass Shannon Bedore. When is somebody going to clock in and wake up and be invested in making the show great? Why get to 20 years and it become a flop? Why don't y'all recognize and put your bulletproof vest on and come ready to clock in like Tamra Judge? Fine. Your friends are not on the show except for Emily and Gina. Cool. Then do your job, make the show great, clock out, and then go home. But this mess I'm seeing for these episodes, I'm not even tuning in. Again, Carlos and Alexis were looking at each other and like, is that it? Did we miss anything? No, because it was boring as hell. So there you go. My tea on reality TV is they're going to need to come correct. How can they obviously have stylists and have more production value than the ladies of OC and still be boring and confusing and dumb? I don't know, but I know I'm not going to waste my time watching it. I would take my Tylenol, sleep, and go to sleep. I need to go to bed anyways. I need to concentrate on what's going to make my retreat coming up in October even better than anything I could ever imagine. Making people comfortable, being in the moment, not wasting my time on trash TV, because this, what I've seen over the past week, has been trash. Makes me want to basically start my own YouTube show because what that mess is dumb. You can take the girl out of the hood, but you can't take hood music out the girl. But I'm going to end this with a word, just as I started this podcast. Do or do not do. There is no try. And that's a word from Yoda. I hope I have conveyed just how much fun I have had in creating this podcast. I've got my mojo back. Just set your intention or reset your intention. It could be daily if necessary. Mine is peace. No mental dumping over here. If I'm acting like I'm not listening, I'm probably not. I'm not your therapist. I'm not a therapist. Keep the crazy to yourself, child. You do you and leave me be. The sooner you figure that ish out, the happier you will be. So this is what I want to convey in this podcast. And that wraps another of FAFFO has a fro. Join me next time as I throw shade and point out the shade and simply have fun. Y'all have a great new year. What, y'all? What?